Welcome to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie.
Working in childcare means that you are building a legacy every day because what we do impacts how hundreds of children are going to be tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Creeps on a petty pace. Wait, no, we're not doing Shakespeare. Anyway, somebody who really lives this whole legacy is Whitney McCrory from Oklahoma, where she's not just building the legacy, she is building on the legacy that her mother built. And she is she's running several centers, and she is being an advocate, a voice for the provider in Oklahoma. And welcome, Whitney. Um, I don't want
Cute.
to tell your whole story, so I want you to tell your story, the part you want people to know right now. Um, how did you, when did your mom start? How old were you? What happened? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Okay, so my mom started in 1982. So we call her, she's the OG of childcare, uh, especially, in Oklahoma. So that was before I was born. I was born in 1987. I don't know if I want to say that on a podcast, but
Already
my,
did. And just so
I
you know, if it
know,
makes you feel any better, that's when I graduated from high school. So we'll go there.
I'm telling you, I'm getting more and more self conscious. My son will be like, my mom is 38. And I'm like, shh, don't tell people that. But no, my mom started in 1982. I have two older brothers, and she needed somewhere for my brothers to be. She was working at the Bank of Oklahoma. She wasn't in childcare, and she was looking for care for her two rowdy boys. And she realized that there wasn't anything in Oklahoma, nothing that met her standard. So she decided to start her own. She left the bank. She bought what used to be a little tiny church, and she opened up. That was in 1982. I was born in 87. So things were obviously going well. At that point, she had acquired a second location. And when I was probably 6, she started on her third location out in Tulsa. So she initially started in Sand Springs. And then by the early 2000s, she had a total of 6. 6 is a lot.
It is.
6 is a lot. So I was born into the industry, and I've been in it since I was just a few days old. She even took me to the office then. So I know the ins and outs. And in 2009, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's now in remission. So that everything went well. She went through a few rounds of chemo and radiation, and she came out on the other side. So she decided that 6 was a lot. She wanted to retire. She had talked about selling. And like I said, I knew that one day this was all I'm going to have left of my mom is, what she's doing here with all these families, with the staff, everything. So my husband and I made a plan to we went to Security Bank. We secured an SBA loan, and we made the offer, and we purchased 3 of the 6. And they are still in operation today. We were able to pour into our programs. We totally rebranded. We changed the name. And now we have Legacy Childhood Education Centers. We have 3 nationally accredited 5-star programs in the Tulsa area.
Wonderful.
Well, I think that's a great place of the story. You missed one little bit, and I'm just maybe it's because you didn't want to share it, but I wanted to stress that it wasn't just you who decided to help your mom retire. One of your brothers also, at the time, now went a different path, but at the time also made an investment in 2 of the programs, 3 of the programs, 1 of the programs.
2. He purchased 2 of them, and unfortunately, this is an industry that you really have to know what you're doing, and he had not spent as much time, so he wasn't as successful in doing what I'm still doing today. And then she still has 1 building that she leases out to a woman outside of our family. It's a totally separate program. None of us have ever even met the owner of that program.
Okay, so you bought the programs when?
The fall of 2018, so about 8 years ago.
So you
Awesome.
lived through the great purge of 2020 to 2023.
We did. So COVID happened not long after, and that first year of ownership, I was on my own. My mom had an army of people that she had working for her. She had, somebody to do food program and somebody to handle curriculum. I don't. It's just me and my husband. We wear a lot of hats. And that first year was baptism by fire. I mean, we had an OIG audit where they were auditing our attendance records for payments. We had licensing visits because you're on a permit. So we had a 6-month permit, and we had to, before we could officially become licensed, we had to make it through that.
Yep.
We had accreditation because the programs were already accredited, and to maintain that, we had to go through our own. So it was just baptism by fire. And then, boom, COVID happened. And that time was really uncertain. We didn't know, were we going to be able to survive this? Every day I was having to go hunt for supplies just to stay open. And, the state came through. They were able to give us additional funding. There were grants available, and that is really what made us able to pour into our programs. So we were able to completely revamp them, and we're immensely proud of them.
Well, I think it's really exciting just to say that you have A, 3 locations, B, 3 accredited locations, and you're part of your state's quality improvement program. But really the part that is by far, for those who don't already know you, and we will make sure to have your links in the chat, is your champion level advocacy for the state of Oklahoma, and not just for you, but for how many private childcare, well, all childcare centers are impacted. How many childcare centers are impacted in Oklahoma as a result of budget issues?
Oh, everybody. So in total, there's about 3,000 programs. That includes centers and homes. That's privately owned. That's franchises. So 3,000 programs. And Oklahoma is primarily subsidy-based programming. Even some of the Primrose take subsidy in Oklahoma. So there's a huge need for subsidized care in Oklahoma. And it's our belief that all children deserve quality programming, whether they're able to pay privately out of pocket or whether that is subsidized childcare. So we have never limited how much subsidy is in our programs. And so whenever they started to make these cuts back in the fall of 2025, it's just a dumpster fire here, to be honest. I don't know if I want to get into it that much, but we've always
but I think there's some things that I've read enough. So Whitney and I chatted a little bit about my very short life in Oklahoma, but the fact that life was still pretty impactful in early childcare, and that I read a lot of what is happening in Oklahoma. And I think the fact that, there were all kinds of budget issues. If you guys want to, just Google it, do your own AI search or something, and they will tell you everything that Whitney's been living through, because the state's done some things that most of us would shake our heads at. And I think it actually started as far back as 2024, when they first announced some of the changes they were going to make. And so, your budgets have been impacted hugely. Now you've maintained your 5-star accreditation, and so that's helped you on some levels. But if I read right, one of the stories I read was about a hospital system, that in the hospital system they provided childcare as an employee benefit, is kind of how I read it, that they've closed their childcare centers because of the subsidy and the budget issues that go into having a program. And so if something that is as stable as a hospital can't keep their childcare center open because of the budget changes, I think that says an awful lot about the state of the state of the industry in Oklahoma.
It does. And I am familiar with the hospital that you're talking about, and they are closing their program. They said that they're losing $1 million on it. And like you said, if a hospital who has so many resources isn't able to fund that program, how are we supposed to be able to do that? Our hands are really tied when it comes to subsidy in Oklahoma. We are not allowed to charge what's called gap pay.
Right.
So the difference between your tuition and what the state reimburses.
And
Um,
that's the same in Texas. I know, like in Indiana, you can charge the difference, and in some other states, you can.
yeah, we actually had a franchise come in, and they were the person, the franchisee,
Franchisee. Mhm.
franchisee, thank you. That's a whole world I'll never know. They came in and were about halfway through a $2 million investment when they learned that they are not allowed to charge gap pay. So Oklahoma is quite a bit different than other states, and our regulation is one of the top in the state. I'm sorry, top in the nation. So our oversight regulation is very, very heavy. We have no less than 3 unannounced licensing visits a year, and that doesn't include if you have a complaint. That doesn't include QRIS or quality improvement visits as well. You get 2 of those, so they're out a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And
maybe they should scale back that a little bit and give you back some of your money.
well, but that is not the governor's solution. The governor's solution is to roll back ratios, not to roll back oversight, and not to increase funding. His solution is that we just need to go back to the good old days when you could have 6 infants being cared for by 1 adult, because childcare worked just fine back then when we had 6 infants for 1 adult. That's his thought.
Yeah.
And they'll say, we were fine, just sitting at grandma and grandpa's house. And, but we know more now. We know more about brain development, about all those early years. So it's more important than ever. We need to take the information that we know.
Right. But also, in the days when you would be staying at grandma and grandpa's house, grandma had her children in her 20s, and mom and dad had their kids in their 20s. So grandma and grandpa were in their 40s and 50s. Today, if an awful lot of people had their first child in their 30s, and then their children had their first child in their late 30s. So now you're asking somebody who's in their 70s to watch these kids. And I'm sorry, a 70-year-old cannot keep up with the average toddler.
No,
The
they
average
cannot.
70-year-old can't keep up with the average toddler. There are some, that can, but that whole perception of grandparents can do it. Yeah, when the grandparents were in their 40s, that made
But
sense.
also-
If the grandparents are in their 60s and 70s, it doesn't make as much sense.
But we also have to remember that those grandparents are still working because they also can't afford to not be working. So, again, when the grandparents were in their 40s, grandma probably was still able to work, be at home. She didn't necessarily have to work. Now in their 70s, when they should be able to be retired, they can't afford to be. So that could be its own soapbox for today. I mean, maybe we should figure out how to segue into a different topic, because I think we can talk about all those dumpster fires, but Whitney, I think the fact that you have continued what you identified as your mother's legacy, tell us a story or 2 or 3 about families that have been with y'all since the 80s, because I'm sure you've got some of those. I'd love to hear some of those, and then I'm going to let you give us some of your favorite tips for managing and maintaining staff.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's a heavy topic. Okay. Well, my mom has a lot of really good. She should have been the one on the podcast. They're telling you. I told her. I said I think they want me to tell a couple of your stories, Mom.
Well, you
She
could
was
just tell us your stories,
interested.
because I'm sure you've got some doozies too.
Oh no, I feel like hers are so much better because things were different then. They were different. Well, so one of my favorite stories is okay, I have 3 stories, and I'll try and get through all of them. Okay, so this one is a little eerie. So she had a longtime employee who worked for her, and one morning the woman did not show up to work. And in our line of work, that's fairly common. We get some no call no shows, but this woman had been there a long time. And shortly after opening, the phone rang. The husband was calling, and he said, "I'm sorry, Susan's not going to be able to come into work today." And they were like, "Oh my gosh, is everything okay?" And he said, "No, she's dead. She called in dead." Anyway.
Well, I love the way you told that story, because I'm going, it's not that she's never coming back to work. She's just not coming to work today. I'm like, that's the part that
Doesn't feel
cracks
like
me up. I'm like,
today.
so she's not coming. So she's coming tomorrow?
No, but she really did pass, and it was a huge loss for the center. But just the way her husband just took it upon himself to call in for her, she's not going to be able to come in today or tomorrow. So that was a pretty unique story. I've not had that happen to me. Not thank goodness. But let's see, another one. She had an employee who was let's see, this was probably in the 90s, and the center that she was operating at the time, she was trying to do, I think, either late night care or 24-hour care. She was kind of testing out a new model, and she had the closer of the facility, who she trusted. Things seemed to be going all right, but the inventory of food stock was kind of dwindling. Things were coming up missing. She thinks she ordered, enough chicken nuggets and then enough cereal, but then they would be gone and she would have to replenish the stock. And she was like, that's just so weird. And she couldn't ever prove anything, but she thought maybe that closing staff member was perhaps stealing the food. And
Mhm.
so she didn't have any proof. She let time go by. And I guess one night, the woman had a medical emergency, and I guess IMSA ended up showing up and the police showed up, and obviously my mother showed up, and she said there was a whole black trash bag of groceries with this woman. So I guess she was like carrying out, like Santa, a bag of Cheerios and, chicken nuggets or whatever it was. She was just grocery shopping. And I think she had a seizure. And that's how she ended up realizing, all the pieces were there. That's what was happening. That's where the chicken nuggets were going. They were going home with this employee. And so I've not had that one happen either.
I had one kind of like that. I had one
Where
kind of like that.
she got caught stealing because she had a medical emergency?
No, just somebody who was walking off with supplies and equipment. And we didn't have proof because the area where they were didn't have a camera.
Mm.
So
This was back before cameras, way back.
well,
Way,
before cameras were
way back.
very prevalent. There've been cameras
Yes.
since the 70s. We they were just not good.
Oh no, they weren't. And now you can see everything.
Yeah, you can
See way
count
more
this
and
the
it's
hairs
no
on their
longer the
chin.
nanny cam and the stuffed animal. Now it's like, hi, I am blatant a camera watching you. So yes.
Yeah.
All right. So you said you have a third one.
Okay, so the third story is I was probably 16 years old, and I believe that this was my mom's first time going through accreditation. And it was at one of the locations that I own today. And I had been there to help her. I was helping in the office and helping in the classroom and, trying to make this happen. And I didn't understand exactly what was going on. I didn't understand how important this day was. And she went into the exit visit with the validator, and the feedback was tough. It was rough, and it wasn't a very good visit. And so she got in her car, and back then she drove kind of an SUV, and my cousin was with us also. And so my
Mhm.
mom is pretty frustrated. She's getting in the car, she slams the door. Cousin and I are buckling up, and she backs out, and the parking lot's really full, and she backs out, and she hits her own sign in the parking lot. Her own sign. And I said, Mom, don't you want to get out and look? And she said, it's my sign. It's my car. We're going home. And she didn't even get out of the car. She left that sign and she went home. But you know what? She still passed accreditation. She did it. So
Awesome. Okay. So do you have pictures of the sign?
I don't. I wish I did. That would have been, 2004. But no, I wish I did. That would be good to show, but I see it in my head.
You're like, I could draw it if I could draw, right? Like so.
I mean, the sign just lay there. Her car had a dent. We found that when we got home, but she did not. She didn't give any cares in the world about it. She was like, I've had enough of this.
Yep.
I'm going home. I'm done.
I don't want to be here anymore. They did not give me cookies today. This was not a good
No.
cookies and milk day.
But she passed, and it turned out to be great. So we fixed the sign, we fixed the car, we got accredited. Woo!
I think the car should have had that dent for a while, just as a way to
As a
kind
reminder.
of remind her that, maybe she should take a deep breath and things aren't always going to be as bad as they seem. So on that, you've had some very interesting staffing stories. What is one secret that you think you bring to the table? What's your secret sauce for retaining staff? So all month we've been doing episodes on staff retention and staff appreciation, and I love to hear what our guests have to say.
Man, I don't know. That's a tough question. I think that really what separates us from other programming is that we're very, very hands-on. Both of us, my husband and myself. So they see us pretty much daily. The kids see us, the staff see us. We're human to them. So they know that we're there to support. And I think really that is the secret sauce. I mean, I've got staff members that they came with the building when I purchased it. They're still with me, even though my programming is, exponentially different, and my expectations are much higher. But they've stayed on, and they believe in our programming, our cause. But it's also because, we show them we're here, we're human. You need something, we're all in it together. We're never going to be in an office with the door closed where you can't find us. That's
I think that is great, Whitney. Thank you so much for sharing. Carrie, do you want it or you want me to do it?
Why don't you go ahead? You're already talking.
We are so glad that y'all joined us. We will be back in a couple of days. And if you aren't sure that you are already getting our newsletter, make sure that you go to childcareconversations.com and join our newsletter. It comes out twice a week, same day as our episodes drop. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for tuning in. We love bringing you real talk and fresh insight from the world of early childhood education. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay connected and catch all of the latest episodes. And if you're planning a conference, training, or special event, Kate and Carrie would love to speak to your audience. You can learn more about their keynote sessions and workshops at kateandcarrie.com. If you learned something today, share the show and leave us a review below. We'll see you next time on Childcare Conversations.